In today's episode, I'll explain what hypergamy is and how it affects relationships. Hypergamy is a biological term and, according to the definition, means the choice by a woman of a life partner with a higher or at least similar social position to her own and the choice of partners of the same or higher rank by female mammals. Humans belong to mammal clusters, and therefore females also belong to mammals. Few people in society know about the existence of hypergamy, and all the more they do not realize how much influence it has on the marriage market and female and male relationships. Ignorance of the rules of the game will not relieve you of consequences. Repeat again: hypergamy is the choice by a woman of a life partner of at least the same rank or higher. 99% of women don and oppose want a partner with a lower social status. To clarify exactly the effects of hypergamy, let us illustrate the issue. Women by nature will seek permanent relationship partners of the highest possible value, so-called alpha males. The supply of such men by definition is limited. Strong, dominant men are a minority in society. Let's assume it's the top 10% of the population. High, strong, well-built, with a lot of wealth. That's the kind of men women want. From the episode about SMV, we already know that women and men represent different values at different times in their lives. For women, this has to do with physical attractiveness. For men, with resources, social status, and good genes. So, what does that mean in practice? A woman for a relationship will always be looking for a man of no inferior value to her own. In practice, I hypothesize that a man with equal status to a woman is not enough and will always seek a higher status, aiming at the highest. From a pragmatic point of view, this is quite understandable and rational, because such an attitude maximizes women's chances of reproductive success and survival. It is obvious to say that it is better to have more than less. More health, more money, more respect, more opportunity. The trouble for most people is the fact that society as a whole protects individuals of high status. Such units are called elites. They used to be the strongest in the group, the clan, the tribe, then the kings and the members of the court, magnataria, nobility, etc. For the same reason, attractive people can more and more be forgiven them. Women will therefore look for men in relationships who have a more subjectively perceived value than they themselves. This value can manifest itself in various attributes, but most often it is reduced to status, appearance, and resources. Life is not a fairy tale, so if you've achieved a certain status, women will conclude that you probably have certain qualities, such as leadership and domination. Appearance is an indicator of good genes. And resources nowadays are money and the opportunity to make money. Hypergamy is the instinct that guides women's behavior. In most cases, it has nothing to do with morality or love. In some simplification, hypergamy is an element that allows women not to feel guilty when they cheat. From their point of view, if they find a man who is higher in the hierarchy than the previous one, they go in and that's all that matters. A woman will then find a whole bunch of rationalization to explain a mechanism whose presence she is not even aware of but does not want to feel guilty of hurting someone, for example, by not keeping her word or marital oath or fidelity. The basic scheme then is to transfer responsibility for your actions to your partner. Most often the words are that you loved too little or too much, that you were limited or you were not interested enough, you were all the time at work or you worked too little. An excuse will always be found, and you will know it by the fact that never a woman will take responsibility for betrayal. It's like driving a car, causing a collision by not following the signs and forcing priority, and after all, explaining that it's not your fault because you didn't make the car. That's the level of logic. A partner stuck to the wall with no shadow of shame will tell you that it's your fault, that you didn't trust her, and suggest how you might have found out. You didn't respect her privacy, and betrayal is no longer the problem, just that you had the courage to catch her on it. I couldn't believe it when I heard this from a woman's mouth. It's level hard, but you need to know that because that's the rules of the game. Because of hypergamy, always more interesting will be a rich, caring, dominating president of a large company who has a lot of people under him than a homeless with a rich interior. By the way, does the rich, caring, dominant president of a big company associate with nothing? What about Gray's 50 Faces? The author of Mrs. James put her fantasies on paper, and it was a business shot in the 10th, 125 million books sold. The film made $90 million in its first weekend of screenings. There is an irresistible question as to why. It is, in my opinion, an average erotic novel in literary terms, and it has been such a worldwide success. Why? Yes. For exactly the same reason that Playboy was successful. 50 Shades of Grey was the answer to the hidden and primitive dreams of women. Just like Playboy in its time was the answer to the hidden dreams of men, supply and demand. The gentlemen have no influence on hypergamy because it is a biological imperative, that is, the most primitive impulse to act. They simply cannot do otherwise. You need to know that too. Even if they wanted to rebel against nature. In a determined and in most cases nature will defend itself and win. The mechanism is a very simple body of a woman in contact with a man whom she considers to be lower in the hierarchy, flooding her with negative feelings, reluctance, and even disgust. Women want to keep their appearances because they are more social beings and more dependent on the opinions of their surroundings, and so they often behave simply correctly in the sense of politeness. But the very thought of getting closer to such a man will pick her up for vomiting. She will feel disgusted and it will just reject her. The discomfort will be so great that she will have to physically move away from such a man. Just being close will be a very unpleasant experience. There's no talking about hugging. This is how most women will react to an attractive man. On the other hand, when a woman feels desire, she will approach the man herself and will seek as close contact as possible with sexual contact. The mechanism is simple. It's punishment and reward. Punishment, that is, negative emotions. The reward is pleasant feelings and emotions associated with desire. This is how evolution controls human action. It is on this mechanism that the whole art of seduction is based, to make a person feel comfortable. The techniques for achieving this effect are different, but in the end, the point is that we go to bed with the company of who we feel good about. It's biology and precisely biochemistry and neurobiology, or how to influence another person to find you attractive. If you think what I said is manipulative, then you're probably right. I only point out that the same caliber manipulation is female makeup to be more attractive. Wearing heels makes the legs longer, that is, the proportions of the body visually look more favorable. Thus, there are push-ups and plastic surgery to enlarge the breasts. All to make a man feel in a certain way, to make him feel excited. The excitement is pleasant, and then it is he himself will adore the woman. It's the same manipulation, both sexes play a game. The basic mechanisms and pickup artists I will explain in the next episodes. If at least once in your life you have experienced a strong fascination but your feelings have not been mutual, then you have probably already encountered hypergamy. In other words, in the eyes of women, they did not represent an insufficient value. Note that women sit in the passenger seat in the most expensive cars. It's not a coincidence. You won't see an ugly woman next to a Mercedes-AMG or Lamborghini. Pay attention to this next time you see a really luxurious car. The prank about the so-called gold digger is a quintessence. That's how hypergamy works. It is a mistake to insult women for their nature. It has to be understood and played according to its rules. Most women behave hypergamy, even if they are not aware of it. Statistics show that most divorces are initiated by women, and the main reason is not at all betrayal, but a mythical inconsistency of characters. Quote from the report: the dominant cause responsible for more than 40% of divorces is the inconsistency of character, i.e. the reason why its symptoms are difficult to clearly describe. indicating the existence of various misunderstandings arising from the way both parties think and act. Moreover, in recent decades, the importance of this cause has clearly increased, which in 2018 appeared as a reason for filing lawsuits in 27,000 cases. At the same time, the other reasons for divorce were half as important. Then how do we explain this incompatibility of characters? The couple were getting married after a drunk in Las Vegas after knowing each other for a few hours during the period of engagement. The characters were consistent, and after the marriage, they ceased to be consistent. Not entirely. Hypergamy is important here. Men in marriage have lost their masculine attributes. They subordinated themselves to their spouses, and what does it mean that they submitted? Yes, they ceased to be perceived as those of greater value, and then the women automatically stopped respecting them, which caused all sorts of problems. This is how hypergamy manifests itself in marriages. If you lose the male attributes, you'll lose the female as well. Hypergamy causes most women to look for better men even after marriage. And because they often misrecognize their value in the marriage market, explains this in the episode about SMV, they often make bad choices for themselves. Later, after the divorce, it turns out that, however, they do not have the market as they expected. And we have a drama. You can easily imagine that if hypergamy had not worked, then divorces would actually happen in situations of obvious ill treatment, and women would not run to bad boys like that. And after all, every woman knows that the lobster loves the most. It's only when a bitch punches such a woman in for letters that there's a moment of reflection. But usually, it's just a moment and the pattern repeats itself. You have to understand this because these are the rules of the game. There are no others. This is, paradoxically, a female drama and a source of excitement. Bad boys behave in such a way that they present themselves as alpha males. They do not respect women, they do not seek their consideration, they don't submit to them, they give them their attention for nothing. They have a choice, which makes them independent and strong. Women fly on guests like ants to light. The problem is that almost every man who behaves this way will start to succeed in women. Not everybody, but this amount will exceed the boldest expectations. If he starts to be successful with women, then he'll start to have a choice. When he has a choice, he will naturally reject the preferences of women who will not be attractive. Why? Because he can. Because he has a choice. He will break their hearts without paying much attention to it because he knows that right away, if not this one, it'll be the next one. That's what the drama is. Women most desire men they can't have or control. And not just women. Generally speaking, people tend to want more of what they can't have. Desire triggers women's urges, and bad boy games often end in single motherhood. Because a woman doesn't have the tools to force such a bad boy to stay in a monogamous, permanent relationship. Besides, if she forced him, he would automatically stop being a bad boy and she would stop wanting him. A woman is the guardian of pleasure and a man is the guard of relationships. Remember that. In my opinion, it is precisely for this reason that monogamy has been imposed from above, because known about the nature of women and their key role in the reproductive game and the negative consequences for society that it entails. The social consequences are far deeper than suffering and broken hearts might seem. We are witnessing a relaxation of social norms. We are also seeing the progressive consequences of this process, and that is by no means the end. It's gonna get worse. That's why you guys need to know what the biological rules of the game are, because of the social ones you've seen in fairy tales, TV shows, and movies. So be nice. Bye. The flowers will cease to be valid, and it will be even worse.